Hey folks, welcome to the Generational Gap. I am Robert, your resident Gen Xer. And right over there, right beside me, that direction right over there is John. John, our resident millennial, as it
Yeah.
were, for want of a better term.
I like the vitriol that was in your voice there.
Well, it's I sit and I run through a list of things that I want to call you, and I realize that millennial's about the only thing I can say on here that won't get me deplatformed or called out for cursing and have to put something in the fuck it bucket.
Fair enough.
So John, how's your week been going, sir? It's Friday, exciting day.
Yes.
End of
it's
the week.
Cameron, dude.
What's up, Mr. Cameron Michael? Good to see you,
Cameron.
sir. Fellow human, that guy, that wow guy. He's a wow guy. He's a wow guy. I don't know if you knew that,
You guys are nerds. I did.
Are we?
Yeah.
Guess what, John?
Not like me, who I'm
You're right there with us.
Nope.
I'm sorry, I missed everything after. I have a pet dragon because I love D&D.
I do.
What was that, John?
I do have a pet dragon.
Excuse me while I take off my nerd hat and try and look cool with my sunglasses.
That's right.
Mm-hmm.
John did not say that he was rolling a warlock because John is not playing.
We could, actually, I think John's going to go ahead. John is going to play for a month, but we'll discuss that off mic. I think
I'm being bribed.
I think John will be willing to at least give us 30 days of his time on WoW and show us exactly what he's got. And
only under duress.
By the way,
under a massive amount of duress.
I think we could find a way to make your character a neckbeard.
That helps.
I think we could do it. All right, so John.
Yes.
Anything exciting going on for you this week? Did anything happen? It was just work and sleep.
Yeah, not this week. But part of my announcements that I'm about to do, I guess I might as well do them right now.
We got announcements?
Yes, we do. Next Friday. So Friday coming up.
1 week from today.
1 week from today.
1 week from tonight.
We will be having Blonde from the Beauty and the Beta podcast and from Blonde in the Belly of the Beast as a guest. That'll be awesome. She just got back from Europe, I think. So, or she will have by then. So, yeah, that'll be awesome. We'll be able to talk to her about some of that, her experiences over there, some of the things that she's said on her channel and the podcast. So that'll be awesome.
Oh, yeah.
And then the following week. Yes, the following Friday, the Generational Gap will have 100% less John.
Oh, thank God.
Yes, because I will be gone. I'll be in New Orleans, actually, with Cameron, who's in the chat right now. So that'll be awesome, too.
You guys are going to go show your breasts and earn some beads?
Damn right.
Yeah.
Yep. And then Halloween, we're doing our Halloween Spooktacular for charity, I believe we decided. We haven't decided which one, but...
there's a good chance it's going to be St. Jude's again, because,
probably.
St. Jude's.
Yeah, we like them. And then December 6th, we're doing our 12-hour live stream for charity for Toys for Tots, so we can hopefully give some of the toys to some needy kids who wouldn't have them otherwise. So that's what we've got going on so far.
So let me ask you a question, John. Here's the $64 million question.
Oh, shit.
Who do you have lined up to take your place while you're in New Orleans?
I don't yet. But
really?
No, I'm working on it, though. I have two people in mind. If one says no, I got to back up. So.
What's up, Midget? And just FYI, I know all about the Shriners from when I was younger. And no, I'll go with St. Jude's, thank you. I know what those guys in those fezzes do. I know all about the Shriners. Mm-hmm.
I have no idea.
All those little cars they ride around in the parades in, they stole those from the children they're supposedly helping. I'm just saying.
What's a Shriner? You should just in case someone in the chat doesn't know, someone watching later on, obviously I know, but someone else might not.
You're asking for a friend.
Right.
They're
all of our friends.
They're a charity organization that helps kids. They've been around, old guys. So they're, if I'm not mistaken, I believe they still are associated with the Freemasons.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, they're rooted in the Freemasons organization, this kind of thing.
Always good to support your local Freemasons.
Right. When they show up at parades, they have a bunch of old guys driving around in little bitty clown cars, like little bitty cars.
Oh, Baha'i. I went to the Baha'i temple over in Chicago. It's beautiful. I didn't go to any like services or anything dumb like that, but I walked around and it was like really cool. It was beautiful. Yeah.
Yeah, well, they've been around for a while and all that, but they're not St. Jude's. Sorry. They're just not.
Yeah.
John, ask Ilan Omar to cover for you. Oh, nice. Cameron thinks you should get Ilan Omar. Yeah, get her
Cameron,
on here. I can have fun with that.
Cameron, start working on that and let me know how that goes for you.
I know what we should do. I have a suggestion. Mm-hmm. I know who could take your spot for the day.
Who's that?
Cameron Michael.
Oh, too bad he's going to be with me.
Oh, that's right. He's going with you.
Yeah, I'm the one he's going.
Wait, John, why don't you just take your equipment and live stream from New Orleans with me?
Because that's the same night that the event that I'm going for is there. Like the whole reason I'm going is that Friday night. So I will be quite indisposed and quite intoxicated. So
I think I and probably many of our watchers would have to say it sucks that you're prioritizing that over the show. This is what's important, John.
I agree. It does suck. But, there we have it.
So it's official. You suck.
It's the way of things.
So, folks, if you like what you're hearing, hit the like button. If you haven't already, hit the subscribe button. Please reach out to your friends and family and have them subscribe to us and, hit the like button too. They don't necessarily have to watch to hit the like button and subscribe, but we would like it if they did. We'll even give them a shout out. Thanks. Just like that. See? I just gave everybody a shout out with one simple word.
Everybody on the entire planet. Yeah.
Right. Thanks. John, there's been a few interesting things going on this week. This has actually been just a crazy kind of week in the greater scheme of things. Just all sorts of things happening. One thing I want to touch on real quick. I went off last week a little bit at the beginning of the show because I've had some real emotional damage. Because of my book series and then making it into a television series and of course this miscasting that went on with it. I do want to say that I went back. I decided to continue on into the cancer of Twitter and look at a few other things here and there and read some of the opinions. And I will say this. They talked me off the ledge of not ever watching the show because deep down inside I really want to see if they can pull this show off. Make it anywhere near the books. But one thing I will say about the casting choices that, an argument was made that because of where these folks come from, where they're rooted, the empire that they're descended from would have been a large empire and would have been a very multicultural empire. And I can get that to where, you might expect some of their descendants to be of various races, cultures, whatever. Now, the only argument I'll make in that, still say I'll watch it, I'll swallow my pride and see what goes on with it. But we're talking about an empire 1,000 years before. So after and in our real time, their 1,000 years would have probably amounted to about 800 years. But in 800 years, John, multicultural group in a small village, couple of hundred people, I figure in 800 years, it's going to homogenize. Right? It still wouldn't be multicultural like it was, whenever they came from this great empire after the empire was wiped out. And that's the thing. The entire empire was wiped out. Right? So there were just a few stragglers that made it out. But 800 years is approximately what? 75 to 80 generations.
I don't know. Yeah,
I would think that a small village would have homogenized after 1,000 years to where no matter what the color is, whatever whatever ethnic look you might have, however you want to call it, it would still all be the same. Right?
Yeah. I mean, even if they incorporated some of the traditions or customs that, someone else brought into the village, it would still be universal, at least in that,
Right. After that many years, especially if they're shut off from the rest of the world, not a lot of in and out traffic, not a lot of new people coming into the village, very rarely.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're going to homogenize your small culture very quickly, well before 800 years has passed. Mm-hmm. So they made the argument, which I could stomach the argument to a certain extent, but my argument is it doesn't hold as much water, but I'll live with it, and we'll see where it goes from there. There's some other casting choices that is really going to be the either the nail in the coffin or give me more impetus to watch it. But damn it all. I mean, John, you said you kind of had the same thing that happened with Star Wars, right? Mm-hmm. So now imagine if Disney wanted to remake the first 3 Star Wars or the second half of the first 6, with Luke and all of that. And they said, Luke needs to be an African American to be more diverse in the culture. Mm-hmm. Would that bother you?
Yeah.
Yeah, that would that's that kind of thing, right?
But to be fair though, if anyone other than Mark Hamill played Luke Skywalker, that would piss me off. So it's more about that, but pretty much Force Awakens was a remake of A New Hope.
Yeah, in a sense, it kind of was, right? It really was. An even better example, and I've mentioned this in Discord during conversation about this. Imagine that they wanted to redo The Lord of the Rings and make all the elves more culturally diverse.
Oh, well, yeah.
Wouldn't that just see?
It's very difficult in fantasy to have something like that happen, because usually it's very homogenous races. Like, those are the elves over there, and they stay over there, and these are the, humans, and they're kind of there or like over there.
Is it really hard for them to imagine doing that in this day and age?
Oh yeah, seriously. You can. I'm just saying, like, right. People like that in fantasy where like there's like structures and if you go over here, you can expect to run into this. If you go over here, you can expect to run into that. And
but that doesn't.
These people over here don't like these people, but they love these people.
Doesn't sit well with the
world.
Doesn't sit well with the snowflakes.
More simple. It's much more easy to follow though.
Yeah.
You don't have to write all these complicated, write an entire book on the politics of a fantasy world.
Isn't it ironic that in fantasy novels, segregation just seems to work? It's just it kind of does its own thing and it works, right?
It takes after
the elves stay with the elves, dwarves stay with the dwarves. It's it's the thing.
Yeah, I mean it takes after the medieval era, which that was kind of the thing in the medieval era was, we're gonna you conquer land, but it's usually you're conquering, neighboring people and not like someone far away. You know what I mean? So you kind of have similar cultures and stuff like that. But
I can't wait to see it. Lord of the Rings, starring Samuel Jackson as Elrond. There's too many motherfucking orcs on this motherfucking tree.
Yeah.
Right? Something like that? Sam Jackson plays Elrond.
That'd be kind of cool, actually. I'm not mad at that.
You would be. You would be. Deep down inside, you'd be like, really?
Not if Morgan Freeman was
Morgan Freeman, the Saruman.
He was Saruman. Yes. Yeah, dude.
Hold on. I don't know. You got to give Morgan Freeman Gandalf. He's got pretty much all the gray.
He does.
I mean,
that kind of fits him more. Yeah.
Yeah. I think you'd have to give him Gandalf, and we'll let Denzel Washington play Saruman.
What's even funnier is he'll still turn into Gandalf the White.
Ooh, that would really mess folks up.
Yeah.
Especially if they CG'd him white.
Oh my God. That would be great.
Oh my God! All over the world, little SJW heads would just.
Yeah, they wouldn't know what to do with that.
They would just pop.
It's not in the program.
You can't put a black man in white face. Wait,
yes, you can actually.
Can you? Gandalf the Black. Wesley Snipes should be Saruman. Good call, Wesley Snipes. That's not bad.
Yeah, that's true. That's fair.
All right. So speaking of aging wizards, I don't.
Wow.
Did you hear?
Transition.
Did you hear about Ruth Bader Ginsburg?
I did right before we
Right before
went
the
live.
show, because you don't keep up
Yeah.
with any news. So apparently she went in and she had to have a treatment for a cancerous tumor on her pancreas. Now, pancreatic cancer, just FYI, is a cancer that typically they give you about 5 years for. Very few people live much past 5 to 10 years after with pancreatic cancer. According to the doctors, the tumor was treated definitively and there is no evidence of disease elsewhere in the body. Justice Ginsburg will continue to have periodic blood tests and scans.
Jesus.
Now, the thing is, they say there is no more evidence of disease in her body, but 1999, diagnosed with colon cancer. 2009, pancreatic cancer. Uh, she's got a little bit of a history with cancer situations. And she also had 2 cancerous growths removed from her lung. So, and that was earlier this year. She actually missed for the first time hearing oral arguments for a case in January, which is the first time she missed arguments for a case in 25 years. So she has some run-ins with cancer. So I'm wondering, that makes me a little nervous. I'm kind of, I don't want anything to happen to her. I don't want her to pass away. And the sad part is, it's very selfish reason, because I don't want Trump to have yet another pick for the Supreme Court. Talk about a lopsided Supreme Court. I mean, if we're stuck with this beast the way it is, do we want it weighted that heavily with Trump picks? I mean, you're talking a third of the Supreme Court would be in Trump's pocket. It's a little. Does that bother you at all? Does that scare you a little?
No, not really. Because I mean, Trump's either going to be out of office next year, right? No, the year after, I guess, technically.
If he's voted out, yeah.
Yeah, or 9 years from now. So I mean, either way, he's not going to be around forever.
Well, right.
And I'd rather have honestly people who lean more right than people who lean left.
As a libertarian, do you really?
I mean, there's no way to make it even, right?
Do you think well, there's no way to make it even, but I mean, a 5-4 is the closest balance you have, with the hopes that one of the 5 is going to lean more towards a swing vote, right?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I would rather have people who were actually unbiased and who just interpreted the Constitution like they're supposed to, but that's not the case. That's not the reality. So.
Now, I will say, I won't say that the Supreme Court has been horrible about upholding the Constitution. They seem to do a pretty reasonable job with it. But, of course, the biggest problem I have is this ability to set precedents that... and Midget B says Kavanaugh has done well. And I have to agree with you, Midget. Kavanaugh has done well. In fact, going even so far as, not voting party line necessarily, or making decisions purely based on party line, which was kind of surprising. Of course, my cynical side said, was he doing that just to, is this just something that's happening, as he's coming into it, so he can kind of take some of the eyes off of him that he had on him going into the Supreme Court.
They stopped caring like a week after he was,
well,
before he got the job.
Right, but
after he got the job.
But if he comes in and is just consistently party line, those eyes that kind of start to, they come back to him, is what it, it's that kind of thing where it's like he would be the talk. He wouldn't just be the Supreme Court, Supreme Court justices did this. He's the new fresh judge, so if he's just towing party line in everything he does, of course the media is going to point this out. They're going to, I figure he just, kind of went under the radar a little, and he's like, let me vote my conscience on it. Let me do that. Let's go with conscience, not a party line, right? But no, it's it's this I don't love the idea of stacking the Supreme Court, and even though Trump may be out of office in 2020, Supreme Court justices are picked for life. So, you he's weighing it in, or waiting it for the next Republican president to come in, or
right. But my point is,
fucking up a Democratic president that comes in.
Maybe, but I mean, it seems like he would take a more selfish approach. Like, I want them to vote the way that I want them to vote. You know what I mean? And so once he's gone, that's not really an issue anymore.
Sure, I get that. But anyway, so hopefully she doesn't have any more issues. I will say this: she's 86 years old. So I mean, I'm a realist. She doesn't have a lot of juice left. For the Supreme Court. So it's bound to happen. I don't know. It's a horrible thing to say, but I just hope she can hang on long enough for a Democratic president to come into office, so that, if there's going to be a replacement, it's a balancer, not something that pushes it far too much to one side, because that's the key to the Supreme Court. Yes, you can't have completely unbiased justices there, it seems, because of these party lines, but the closest we can get is a 5-4. So, Cameron says, if not saying that Trump will stack the Supreme Court, but eventually attacking the Supreme Court is the next step towards an authoritarian America.
He corrected it to stacking, not attacking.
Right, but eventually stacking the Supreme Court is the next step towards an authoritarian America, and that's correct. I mean,
I don't think that's necessarily correct, because they still have limited powers, and they can't be. You know what I mean? Like, it's pretty sure it's illegal at least to sway them in one way or another.
True, but the precedents they set, that is the biggest power that they have, is the precedents they set. And
but they're ruling on cases that are being brought before them that have been brought up from the lower courts.
And I get
they have to go through the lower courts first, which is stacked the other way.
Well, depending,
they might not even make it up there to the Supreme Court. That's the whole point of checks and balances, right? Is to ensure that no branch is too powerful.
But you can say the lower courts are stacked one way or the other. It's possible that the case was just ruled on as it was ruled on, but the Supreme Court holds far too much power with their ability to sway things in this country than they should. I mean, even you have admitted in the past, the Supreme Court, it's too much emphasis on the Supreme Court in this country.
That's true.
Right? They just need to make decisions, but we don't need to base every future thing off of that one decision. Right? Every case is different.
Back at it again.
Right?
And Midget B brings up a good point. Whatever happened to Christine Blasey Ford? I thought we cared about her, and she's a victim. Where has she been? Why is she not out campaigning or something?
I'm sorry. If she hasn't been in the media in the last 5 minutes, I've forgotten who she is.
She's the one who accused Kavanaugh of raping her or sexually assaulting her.
She's probably at another frat party.
Probably.
Cameron says the fact that they serve for life and that they interpret the will of the Constitution gives them tremendous soft power. Absolutely. It gives them extreme soft power that that really affects even to the state level, affects how things happen on a state level. They carry a lot of weight in that aspect. So hopefully it'll I don't know. I wish we could get rid of it in some way, find a way to get rid of that power and still maintain the system that they're supposed to be there for. Speaking of old people and kicking the bucket, David Koch died. 79 years old. Yeah. One of the Koch brothers has died. So half of the infamous duo has passed away. Now, what the impact of that is going to be, who knows? Probably nothing major, because I guess if you've got one Koch brother, that's all you need to make some really shitty, selfish decisions, right?
What's funny is the Koch brothers are like the George Soros of the left. Like, the right gets all pissed off about George Soros, and the left gets all pissed off about the Koch brothers. It's pretty funny.
There's a show on Netflix called The Patriot Act. and it's a it's a like an hour talk show. It's a young Indian comedian. Damn, I can't think of his name right off the top of my head. But I like the show. But he was doing an episode, and he was a lot of the focus was on the Koch brothers. But apparently, there's another set of brothers. I guess they're very popular. They own like 3 restaurants in New York. This, that, and the other. They're real playboy kind of guys. They're younger, in their late 20s, and all this. And their last name is Koch as well. They're twin brothers, they're successful twin brothers named Koch. So he was like, and he put up a picture of these Koch brothers, and he's like, the bad Koch brothers, and he's like, you don't even want to look at them. So for the rest of the show, anytime that I'm talking about the Koch brothers, I'm going to take the good Koch brothers and I'm going to put their image up. So at least we have fun if we're going to talk about the Koch brothers. So sure enough, he'd be talking about this shitty stuff that the Koch brothers done, and here you see the 2 younger ones dancing and partying in the nightclub and running around having a good time. There you go.
Wow.
But yeah, so one of them has passed away. And there was an interesting comment that was made in Discord when I mentioned this today, and this goes to Jeffrey Epstein as well. This thing that they do with putting their money in a trust and then determine how the money can be spent, and this, that, and the other. Jeffrey Epstein did this, right?
Yeah.
2 days before his suicide. Should I air quote that?
Yes.
Suicide. He signed a new will, put almost $600 million into a trust with private beneficiaries. No idea who gets what's going to happen. They're going to have to go. Apparently, this could take years for them to break the seal on the trust to find out who the beneficiaries are, and to attack it enough with these victims for victims to try and get any compensation. So he took all the money that would have gone to victims and he wrapped it up in a trust that nobody can get at.
Yeah.
Unbelievable fuckery. Unbelievable.
Yeah, that's really a shitty move.
I mean, here's a question. In a situation like that, why in the fuck aren't his assets seized? Especially when his assets could be directly tied to prostitution, trafficking of minors, things that involve money. I don't understand why his assets weren't seized to where he could not do this.
Well, it's because he wasn't convicted yet. So you can't seize someone's property unless
freeze his assets. They should have been able to freeze them.
I think they should be able to do that, yeah.
They can freeze assets, especially if the crimes that you're accused of involve money. Like if your money was ill-gotten, they can freeze your assets until the court hearing is finalized.
Well, he was the one paying these girls, right?
No, he was prostituting them. Yes, he was giving them some of the money, but he was making money off of it.
Gotcha,
he was trafficking women.
Yeah.
Anytime you do these things, you make money, right? He was making money. He was making.
I've never trafficked people before. I have no idea.
Well, typically you wouldn't traffic people for no money. I mean, it's just kind of pointless, right? It is, yeah. Let's see. Cameron, Mitza says not more power than they should, but more power than safer. He says Rick Scott passed a law allowing the Koch brothers owned Georgia Pacific Paper Company to dump paper plant waste into the St. Johns River. That I can believe.
Yeah. Cameron, of course, you can seize his assets. No, you cannot. Not until he's convicted.
And that's why I clarified, Cameron. There is a difference between seizing and freezing his assets.
I know you're mad at it, Cameron, but we do still have rights. I know it's a terrible thing, but
they could have
can't seize the means of production yet.
They could have frozen his assets to prevent him from doing this, and I don't know why they didn't. Somebody should have seen that something crazy like this could have happened. I mean, I'm just saying. But so the Koch brothers are now the Koch brother.
Yeah.
So I guess he won't be sharing a Coke with a friend anymore. Let's see what he does. Do you think how long do you think he'll outlive his brother?
I don't know.
And do they not have somebody in place to take over all their maniacal schemes once they're
Guaranteed.
gone?
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, guaranteed they're doing something. Yeah, I mean, you don't just stop scheming just because you're dead. Come on.
Yeah, that would just ruin death, wouldn't it?
Wasn't it David Cook that died or something like that?
I believe it
What was his
was
name?
David Koch.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So he's gonna become a lich. You watch.
Go figure. They're like
He's got a
click and
phylactery
clack.
somewhere. Click and clank.
So
Click and clank.
now the next thing I wanted to bring up. This one scares me, John. And it scares me from the standpoint of national security. It scares me from the standpoint of corporate overreach. It scares me from the standpoint of fucking Jeff Bezos. Apparently, Jeff Bezos and Silicon Valley, they're just lumping him in with Silicon Valley. But apparently, a lot of these tech giants have gotten in bed with the Pentagon. To the extent that they have been convincing the Pentagon to the Defense Department should make a radical shift in its computing. Amazon wants the department to abandon its 2,215 data centers and instead replace that with their cloud service. They want the Pentagon to keep all of their information on Amazon's cloud.
Yep.
What? And the Pentagon is going to award a $10 billion contract over 10 years to move the information onto their cloud. Amazon is going to have all of the Pentagon's data information on their cloud. And just in case anybody missed it, Amazon going to have all our business on their servers.
Nothing can possibly go wrong.
Not just NSA bullshit. We're talking the Pentagon. We're talking defense.
Yeah.
I am fucking off the chain about this, John. This is some fucked up shit right now. How much closer does a corporate entity need to be to our government to take over?
Yeah, well, I mean, that's what you people wanted, right? Bigger government.
I mean,
there you go. You got it.
The fucking Amazon is on fire, and now it appears so is our national security from Amazon. I mean,
that's what happens when we have a corporatocracy. It's immediately a violation of the Sedition Act. Let's hope so. Let's fucking hope.
It's known and just to appease
Cameron,
all.
I said you people. That means all you lefties out there who want all your free shit. There you go.
Just so all of those people out there will be appeased. Guess what they're calling the project? Jedi.
Jedi.
The Joint Enterprise Defense Infrastructure.
Oh, they had to reach for that one. Like, you can tell that's one of those that we like. All right, we want to name it Jedi. Now, what can we do with those? Like, oh my god, that's a reach. Fuck, no, you can't disgrace the Jedi name like that. Fucking pieces of shit. Yeah. Fuck, man, that's I'm actually more mad about the name than the actual thing. That's because I expect shit like that to happen. It's like, oh, really? The government and, massive corporations are corrupt? Oh, no. Let's give them more power, guys. Let's do that.
Taking special access intelligence, classified information, or other government property off of JWICS and SkipperNet is convictable. But this is happening. This is the Department of Defense, the DOJ. Everybody's, this is a deal that's going through, and apparently it's a legal deal. Now maybe Trump will walk the decision back. It's possible.
He did recently walk back the red flag law thing, so maybe he'll walk that back too.
So
sure
I mean,
likes doing shit like that.
Understand, they are moving to doing this. They are moving in the direction of making this happen, and they are expecting now. And understand, Amazon is not guaranteed to be who is going to be. It's going to be one of the tech giants out of Silicon Valley. But Amazon, their web services are expected to emerge as the favorite, and get that $10 billion contract. But this is fuck. I mean, this goes deeper than just our personal privacy. I mean, it's bad enough we've got the Patriot Act sitting out there taking away almost every ounce of our privacy. Fuck you, Fourth Amendment. We don't need you anymore. Right. But now we're looking at the country's privacy. Like, I don't care if you're an American with an American-owned corporation. You don't get to see that. You don't get access to that. And I will not for 1 second believe that there's a tech company out there that could tell me honestly that they're going to have access to all that data and not fucking look.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh no, they'll pull some Apple bullshit. Oh no, we didn't build a back door in. It's a completely closed off system. We have no access. Oh, we built an iPhone that we don't have a back door to. There is never is code written without a back door. Never. Right. So I don't buy into that shit. You got to convince me that the cloud is not hackable. It's just the next tier of hacking.
Hackable.
Right.
Yeah, everything's hackable.
I mean, it's inherent to me that the government should build its own infrastructure, handle its own security, handle its own information, and never let it go outside the bounds of the government.
Yeah.
I mean, fuck.
Yeah, I mean, national security stuff is probably one of the few things I think that should be handled by the government.
And Mitch is saying,
that's kind of what it's for.
That Trump, Bloomberg has an article about Trump attacking the idea. Yeah, the best we can hope for is a veto, but it's not like this is a law. This is a defense contract. So right. I don't know how it gets handled, how it gets overruled.
Well, Sedition Act, like Midget B was bringing up.
Well, I guess my question is, would they not have already tackled that obstacle in planning to make this move? This has got to be something they've addressed. They've got to look at the legality of it, and and there's opponents of it, but surprisingly, a lot of the criticism is just coming from opponents of Amazon who may not get the deal. So. The dinner, there was a dinner, Mattis, Bezos, blah, blah, blah.
Cameron Michael, I would absolutely love it if you were to be on this show. Just saying, we've been offering you for like a year. You need to come on the show.
So, I don't want to hear that if you're just going to always do the whiny baby thing. I don't want people to know who I am because stalkers.
I have political ambitions. It might ruin my career. No, be on the show.
Fella Smith, I can't see his first name, but anyway, from the Department of Defense, he was talking about a dinner. He said one of the department's priorities is to reform the way the Department of Defense does business. As part of this reform, leaders are expected to engage with industry in a full and open manner within legal boundaries to find ways to reform our business practices and build a more lethal force. And then a spokesperson for Amazon Cloud Service said the dinner had nothing to do with the Jedi procurement, and those implying other words, because apparently Amazon throughout this entire process has been buddy chumming up. Amazon even had somebody in on the advisory board. Was it Bezos that got in on the advisory board? It was somebody that was on the advisory board to this. department employees arranged for Jeff Bezos, the CEO, to be sworn into an influential Pentagon advisory board, despite the fact that in the year since he'd been nominated, he had never completed a required background check to obtain a security clearance. He hasn't even had a fucking background check. The owner of Amazon, right? He hasn't had that for security clearance, but they're talking about awarding him a $10 billion contract with all of our defense information in it.
Yeah.
Why?
No, it's total bullshit.
Why would anybody from the Department of Defense say that they need to get in bed with
Amazon,
with any
or anyone,
any
with
industry,
anybody,
with anything like that? I mean, why? What does industry have to do with you having better practices and building a more lethal force in the world? You don't need Amazon for that unless you're ordering guns from them. I mean, come on.
Yeah.
I'm just saying. Fucking Amazon.
And Midget B's asking, is Department of Defense supposed to do business? I mean, they technically have to.
Right, because they have
to build buildings, buy servers, all this kind of stuff. And they're doing that through contractors.
Well, Department of Defense, it doesn't all the money budgeting for military spending run through the Department of Defense too?
I'm not 100% sure.
I'm
not sure exactly how. Probably, but I'm not 100% sure.
Because I think the DoD actually, I think they have some encompassing role over military things that happen.
I'd be confident
primarily with spending. But I mean, there's an entire defense infrastructure in this country that has to be maintained. And yes, I understand that you've got to do business with industry to get these things, to have these things done. But you don't need to hand them all of our country's secrets and say, here, put these in your little box, because we can't manage to get our heads out of our ass and revamp our system and do it right.
I mean, do we know if that's what's going to happen? All the, classified top secret stuff going to be there? Or is it just like superfluous stuff?
No, everything that the Department of Defense has in their 2,215 data centers around the country.
Bullshit. Yeah, no, that's total bullshit.
Or the world, however it is. Yeah.
Yeah.
And apparently,
way to put all your eggs in one basket. Like, oh my god, it's such a terrible idea.
And it's bad enough that they use different systems by an array of different companies, right? But when you say that, I see things like, okay, you're using an Oracle database. Right? It's not like Oracle's coming in and they're holding on to all the information in their little pocket. You're using their systems, yes, but it's a software system. It's this, that, and the other. It's not the same thing as okay, here's one company, here's all of our information. Here you go.
Yeah, I like Midget B saying that it's actually an upside. Lots of fucking drone strike footage. That's totally going to end up on Poll Wrecked Thread. Yeah, that'll be actually. I like watching shit like that.
Sadly,
like especially like A10 Warthog or like AC-130. That's one, right? Not AC-130. Yeah, the Spectre gunship. Pretty sure it's an AC-130. Those things are bad fucking ass, man.
All right, you warmonger.
Yeah, a little bit. No, I don't like,
I'm talking about both.
Fucking A, some of that shit is cool as hell.
I'm talking about if we're talking about the same. I'm talking about products and services. The DoD deals with both, and yes, if you're talking about the systems that they use, yes, currently they're products. Whereas what Amazon's going to be offering is a service, storing your shit up on the cloud. Give us all of it. Give us everything. We sell everything. We might as well know everything.
Fuck.
So, my question then, the ultimate question that this leads me to is, this is one of those situations. How do the American people make their will known that if this isn't copacetic to the people? I mean,
Boogaloo.
Is it time for the Boogaloo? Is that it?
So it would have to be for something like that. That's fucking unacceptable.
So we're gonna have to hope, right? that Trump's got our back. We're going to have to hope that in response to this, he says, no, here's X amount of money, take that $10 billion, build our own system, build our own shit. I mean, I would think $10 billion could cover that, right?
I don't know. I don't know what things cost, especially at that level.
Yeah, I mean, but, $10 billion, I would think $10 billion would go a long way to hiring a fucking computer programmer that could set up a cloud server.
You get an IT tech for that, yeah.
And
set up their own cloud server, yeah.
And what kills me
is
the NSA. I don't know if you saw it a few years back. The facility that they were building out in Utah, this huge, monstrous facility to house all these servers and all this data input that was coming in from every source because, of course, our privacy is gone. And I'm like, how do you do that? How do you have that and you can't just move the DoD information there in an already extremely large facility?
I don't know. I mean, I don't claim to know the inner workings of government and how all that shit plays out. But
this is another step towards the rise of the corporatocracy.
Yeah,
it is absolutely the next step. So hang on to your hats, folks, because you're going to be getting them from Amazon.
Which is funny. That is where I got this hat.
That's well, next time it'll be it'll be an army helmet.
Maybe
it'll be a hard helmet. There you go. So since we're talking about megalomaniacs that want to take over the world, Putin. We launched some missiles here recently. Tested out some new missiles. Apparently, they were magnificent. And we talked about this a little on the show. I think it was last week when I said, or maybe it was just in Discord that I talked about it. About there's some hypocrisy in this whole leaving the treaty that we had with Russia, right? About not having the medium range in our ballistic missiles. Nobody was going to be producing them. Nobody was going to do anything with them. It's been a long time. We've had this since what, the 80s? Well, we pulled out of it, right? And we pulled out of it saying Russia was breaking the treaty by working, here's the key word, working on weapons that would violate the treaty.
Mm-hmm.
Well, 16 days after pulling out of that treaty, we test missiles that were not allowed by the treaty.
Why not? The treaty was over.
Hold on. But they didn't build that in 16 days. So what does that tell you? We were working on that. We were working on that for a long period of time before we pulled out of the treaty. So exactly why we pulled out of the treaty, we were doing the same thing. We were already working on missiles that were going to break the treaty.
Well, yeah, no shit.
And I think he pulled out of the treaty so he could whip it out 16 days later and show it off to the world. that missile launched 16 days after pulling out of the treaty, that was Trump's military dick pic.
I don't know. I don't think that's necessarily the case. I mean, I think he wanted to pull out anyway.
And now he's talking about setting these up not near Russia. Trump is talking about setting up these missile launch systems near China.
Mm.
And I'm like, whoa, we're in a trade war with them, sir. We don't need to be putting missiles up. We don't need missile systems. But Putin...
That is kind of a big dick move, though.
Now, Midget, I understand you say that Russia made it obvious their systems were already operational. Well, they hadn't tested anything. And yes, maybe they were working on them, but we didn't just start working on them because they said they were. They said they were working on them.
What does the treaty say? Does it say you can't work on them?
Yes, you should not be. You were not supposed to be pursuing it, right? See, the U.S. said it withdrew from the treaty due to Russian violations, a claim that Moscow has denied, of course. Putin charged that the U.S. waged a propaganda campaign alleging Russian breaches of the pact to untie its hands to deploy the previously banned missiles in different parts of the world. That's why he thinks the America broke it. Pulled out of the treaty was so that they could go ahead and start deploying these things that we had been working on. Now, granted, yes, we believe that he was working on them as well. However, if we're going to start working on them as well, we can't do this hypocrisy. We cannot.
Yeah, we can.
If you find out that they're breaking the treaty by working on these, then that's when you you pull out of the treaty. Not sit around and violate it yourself until you're ready to start testing it.
This is nothing new, though. This is kind of how treaties have always worked, like throughout history. I mean, that's kind of what you do with treaties. You set a treaty, like, all right, we won't do this thing, and then you start getting ready to do that thing. So as soon as the treaty's broken, you can just, continue to do whatever it is, especially with like non-aggression pacts and things like that. So I mean, that's nothing new. And I mean, we all know that we break our own treaties and laws and stuff like that all the time.
Hold on. So, doesn't make it right. And we have, I believe, if we're going to be in the position that we keep throwing ourselves around the world as the police, as the political, lighthouse, as the cultural lighthouse and freedoms and all of this, the one thing that in this day and age we should do is lead by example, by positive example.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't like this. Hypocrisy is the status quo, so whatever.
Well,
this is not how we as Americans should be standing.
Well, yeah, but I mean, you kind of have to, though, because then you're going to fall behind everyone else who wants to. I'm trying to explain to you why that's the case. Yeah, because if you don't, then everyone who's breaking the agreements are going to be well ahead, at least in those particular,
No. You pull out of the agreement. As soon as you find out they're breaking it, you pull out and you start building your own shit.
And they're already ahead of you, though, is what I'm saying.
It doesn't matter where. When you find out that they're doing it.
Wrong. Yes, it's obviously
hold on.
wrong.
No. That's not what I'm saying, John. Listen to me. If you find out they're doing it, that day, you say, okay, we're pulling out of the treaty and we'll start our own work. No matter which direction you go, whether you don't pull out of the treaty or not pull out of the treaty, they're already ahead of you.
Yeah, but if you don't find out for 2 years that they're, or however amount of time it is, then you're already that much time behind.
Yeah, and if you don't know about it, then so what? You pull out of the treaty as soon as you find out about it and start working on your own. No matter which scenario, you're still going to be behind. You don't have to be hypocritical about it.
No, we do, though.
No, we don't.
Our country was built on hypocrisy. We were built on having our cake and eating it, too. Saying one thing and doing something completely different.
Our country was built on that, John?
Yes, it really was.
Is that what the founding fathers were building it on, hypocrisy?
Yes. Yeah.
Then we totally need to revamp the Constitution because
the Constitution itself is fine.
It's hypocrisy in print, then.
No.
How is it not? See, there's where you confuse me. If this country was founded on hypocrisy and the Constitution is the cornerstone of this country, how is it not hypocritical?
Because we don't follow the Constitution, even though we claim to be free. Things like that. Saying one thing, doing another.
You know what? Your libertarian troll speak is not going to work here.
It's not even trolling. That's actually the case.
So you're comfortable with just sitting around not worrying about it? Don't care?
No, it's not that I don't care. There's nothing I can do about it other than say something.
There was a thought in this country that Americans could do something about it if enough people didn't sit around and just not give a shit. Once upon a time, we lived in a representative democracy.
Yes, once upon a time, people were delusional.
Right? I think more people need to get pissed off about this shit, John. I think people need to understand that what we represent in this world is not, we don't live up to the standard that we set or that we try to set. We just don't. And it bugs the fuck out of me from a character standpoint. I mean, if we're going to go isolationist, then it doesn't matter. Fine, go isolationist. But if you're going to be in bed with the rest of the world, you need to not eat crumbs in the bed. Eat food in the bed, leave crumbs. I mean, I'm just saying. Positive examples the world might like to see: convict your pedophiles, respect your nation's constitution, seek control of the reins of government to the governed, apply the law to all regardless of all regardless of. There was that thought once upon a time that Kennedy was assassinated, and I agree.
Yeah.
We did used to have these things. It's this idea now that we we don't have to be upfront anymore. We don't have to be real. We lie, cheat, and steal, and that's not what America's values are supposed to be. And I'm just tired of the populace just going, another day, just another fucking day. Especially,
people are too content and complacent with consumerism, especially just I'm gonna go and buy stuff, and everything will be fine. Nothing out there is really going to affect me, right? And I mean, even like communists will agree that there's no revolutionary potential in the proletariat. Like that's what they'll tell you, and it's 100% true because it's too fat and happy.
Well, it's this, even if people just took the time to, I don't know, go back and educate themselves on, let's just say, the events surrounding World War II. Right? All the things that went on previous to the war actually starting, there were a lot of precursors there. Not necessarily on our part, but we have to look at the precursors that escalate into these conflicts. And something like this is a very overt precursor to potential conflict. And people don't recognize it. And they don't recognize, Putin calls it out like I did. America was working on this as well. So, this idea that we're the bad guy, no, you can't sit around and call Russia a bad guy for doing something that we were willing to do too. This bothers me, and it makes diplomacy difficult.
Yeah. And Midget B saying there are anecdotal accounts of people going through their lives without internal dialogue, or monologue is really what it would be. But no, I mean, I think you've said that before, and I pointed you to the Aiden Paladin video debunking that.
Well,
you should give it a listen. It's pretty awesome.
I'm just going to say...
Give her a listen, too. I mean, even though she ghosted us, I'll still shill for her, because she's a great YouTuber.
I'm just going to
very intelligent.
I'm just going to put this out there. She may have debunked it, but she hasn't met my ex-wife.
That's fair, I guess. I think that's why Midget B did claim their anecdotal accounts.
Sure.
So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I spent almost 2 decades with someone who I don't know that she had any internal monologue going on. I mean, it was just all surface thoughts. It really seemed to be.
I couldn't imagine, actually, that might be nice to not, have thinking abilities. It'd be bliss, Ignorance really is bliss.
Yeah, it's one of those things, I would say that if I were going to point to people that were like that, I would have to say it's, those people that you meet, that you can really tell that they're just living their life till they die.
Yeah.
They're just living their life till they die. They're not living, they're just living their life until they die.
See, I call those
in-the-way
people.
Yeah,
they're in-the-way people. They're the ones who are, when you're trying to get to a bathroom in a crowded place and they're standing right in front of the door having a conversation, they're just in the way. That's all they do. They just when you're walking behind them in a crowd of people and they just stop in the middle of the walkway. Yeah, in the way people.
And those are the
worst people on the face of the planet.
And those are the kind
me off more than anything else. No. Especially when I'm trying to move, I'm trying to get somewhere. Fuck you.
Yeah, those are.
God damn it!
Those are those.
Take one step to the fucking left.
Those are
and you can just sit there and be useless to society all day long. I don't care. Just get the fuck out of my way. That's all I care. Oh my god.
Yeah, those are the people that never have the WTF moments. Right? They never really have a WTF moment. They don't look at a headline and go, "What the?
Oh my god."
No, that can't. What? I got to read this.
I gotta read this. That's a good one.
So that's Russia. Now, the real discussion that's going on right now, the next real discussion, is with another lovely foreign power, China. Shit's hitting the fan with China again. More of this trade war crap. Oh my God. So China's like, hey, we're gonna retaliate against your last tariffs hike with $75 billion in tariffs of our own. and that kicked Twitter on.
I bet it did.
That kicked
the internet is freaking out.
That kicked the orange stream on Twitter, though, because our illustrious leader said, he basically said, he said he was ordering U.S. companies to, and understand, I'm going to, let's clarify orders, because I don't know that he can make this an order without specific things happening. Ordering U.S. companies to immediately start looking for an alternative to China, including bringing your companies home and making your products in the U.S. He also said he was ordering all U.S. postal carriers, FedEx, including FedEx, Amazon, UPS, and the USPS, which is U.S. postal carriers. Thank you for being redundant. To search for and refuse, and he capped that, to search for and refuse all deliveries of fentanyl from China or anywhere else, in parentheses. But China's the important one.
Right.
And so he put that out there. He says, our country has lost, stupidly, trillions of dollars with China over many years. They have stolen our intellectual property at a rate of hundreds of billions of dollars a year, and they want to continue. I won't let that happen. We don't need China, and frankly, would be far better off without them. The vast amounts of money made and stolen by China from the United States year after year for decades will and must stop. Our great American companies are hereby ordered to immediately start looking for an alternative to China, including bringing your companies home, making your products in the USA. I will be responding to China's tariffs this afternoon. This is a great opportunity for the United States. Then he goes on, talks about the fentanyl. He says fentanyl kills 100,000 Americans a year. President Xi said this would stop. It didn't. Our economy, because of our gains in the last 2.5 years, is much larger than that of China. We will keep it that way. So he wants to be fucking done with China from a trade standpoint, from an any standpoint, done.
Yeah.
He said he asked about. He mentioned something. See, he's always been saying that he and President Xi, were very tight. No matter the trade disagreements, he said he and him were very tight. But now he's even questioned, who's the larger enemy? Is China our biggest enemy right now? Mm-hmm. Is President Xi? He called him out specifically. So his response to that he said he was going to talk about this afternoon, is that for many years, China and many other countries has been taking advantage of the United States on trade, intellectual property theft, and much more. Our country has been losing hundreds of billions of dollars. Now it's hundreds of billions, not trillions, with no end in sight. Sadly, past administrations have allowed China to get so far ahead of fair and balanced trade that it has become a great burden to the American taxpayer. As president, I can no longer allow this to happen. In the spirit of achieving fair trade, we must balance this very unfair trading relationship. China should not have put new tariffs on $75 billion of a United States product, politically motivated. Okay, just before I go further, that's a response to us bumping up, $200 billion in trade tariffs. Okay? And I'm thinking that was politically motivated as well, right? But anyway, starting on October 1st, it was $250 billion of goods and products from China currently being taxed at 25% will now be taxed at 30%. Additionally, the remaining $300 billion of goods and products from China that was being taxed from September 1st at 10% will now be taxed at 15%. Thank you for your attention to this matter. So, 5% tax increase on $550 billion in goods and products from China.
Yeah.
And again, I guarantee you this man is going to say this is not going to affect the American consumer.
He probably will say that, but
He
so I mean, to be fair, this is one of his campaign promises. He's trying to get everyone, the businesses to come back here and leave China. So for good or for ill, he's fulfilling one of his campaign promises, and I think it's best for us anyway to try and separate ourselves economically from China because they own so much of our debt that it could just be catastrophic. I mean, we should get a handle on our fucking debt to begin with, but yeah, I mean that's already just that's out of control. I don't think there's anything we can do about that, like at all. I don't even know what this. Obviously, I don't know what the solution is. No one does. Like even top economists, they say, "Oh, here's what we should do," but I mean, there's so many factors. It's pretty much impossible.
So Trump talks about how great our economy is right now.
Hmm.
Okay, more people working. They're supposedly seeing more money in their paychecks. These kind of things. But this trade war, I mean, just these things that came out today punched the Dow Jones in the gut. It punched the stock market in the face. It strengthened
So
these ideas, these signals, these recession signals that have been spotted in our economy over the last couple of weeks. There were a couple of key things that they pointed out and said these are things that specifically happen when we're about to go into a recession, right? I mean, economists, that's what they do all day, right?
yeah,
They know these things, right? Now, that's not
they
to
sit
say we
around all
will
day
go
justifying their job.
right.
Yeah,
Well, I mean,
so they
it's
have to be doomsayers, obviously.
well, technically with the economy. I mean, don't you have to know these signs? Don't you, so that you know what to prepare
Presumably,
for
yeah,
as an economist? It's
yeah.
kind of like a Department of Transportation. You have to
Hmm.
know how traffic works. You have to
Yeah.
know how it flows. Many of them will say it has a life of its own. It's like a living, breathing thing. You got to know what stalls it out, where there's issues, this that kind of thing.
Hmm.
Same thing with the economy. You got to
Yeah.
watch for these things, and yes, apparently there are key indicators that can happen in the market that let you know you're on the precipice of something changing, right? And that's how our
Hmm.
economy goes. I mean, what upsurge in the economy has not been followed by a recession? I mean, this is a typical cycle for the economy. It's not like we consistently have a good economy. It rises and dips. A lot of times, it's typically based upon the leaning of the government at the time. Who's it? President, House, Senate, the whole nine yards, right? These have a lot of impacts on it. But I don't know, man. Our debt keeps climbing. We're supposed to be in a great economy, but our debt is just riding higher and higher. I think that has a lot to do with this egregious amount of military spending that he just pats himself on the back for, which, I kind of, okay, whatever, but I think it's a lot. I think we spend a lot of money on military. We spend a lot of money on a lot of things,
Yeah.
apparently, obviously, so our debt's growing. I don't know how we can say we have a good economy if our debt's still growing. I think about,
Well, yeah. There's a lot. I mean, there's a lot of factors a good economy would mean because again, the debt. Like I said, there's pretty much nothing we can do about it at this point. And I think the reason why he's ramping up the military spending, which I mean, yeah, I'm against that. But again, the reason why I think he's doing it is because this is kind of the beginning of another Cold War with Russia, and so we're kind of getting prepared for that in case something does happen. And again, I don't think we need to do that. I don't think it's a great idea, but we were already spending, what is it, like 8 times more than like the next 5 countries or some shit like that. It was ridiculous, like a ridiculous amount, and then we ramped it up even more. So I'm not sure how necessary it was, but
well,
there
you
you have it.
you talk about a Cold War with Russia, and the only caveat I would insert there is, based on his aggressive diplomatic approaches,
Hmm.
I think there's more at play in this in a proverbial Cold War than just Russia now. I mean,
Yeah,
we're
probably.
talking about potentially a lot of Europe, not happy with America. We're talking about
Yeah, but they're not
North
going to do
Korea
anything.
not we're looking at a Cold War with North Korea. We're looking at issues with Israel. We're looking at the Middle East. I mean, we have a lot of diplomatic uncertainty throughout the world, Russia's just a part of that. Almost.
Really, the EU isn't going to do dick, though.
Well, they're not going to do that. Doesn't.
Well, no. Because
you don't have to do dick in a Cold War. That's the thing.
As soon as Russia starts moving towards them and starts threatening them in any kind of way, they're going to be begging us for help.
But possibly,
plus, like we've said before, we have tons of military bases over there, and they need that money that it generates, and also they don't have to have as much of a military for themselves because we're over there. So that's less money that they're spending on military that they can spend on their government gives, things like that. Well, so while the current leaders might not like our current leader as much, I don't think it's a huge issue diplomatically.
I really feel that because of our immigration policies, because of our trade policies, and from our diplomatic policies, the way it's been going over the last couple of years, I think that we have stressed diplomatic relationships with far more of the world than we ever have, well, in a long time. I think he's testing those relationships, stressing them / testing them. He's very brash and abrupt in his diplomatic style, and that doesn't necessarily play well with everyone.
I think it's more like tough love, though, if anything. He took their toy away or something to teach them a lesson about being fucking cucks.
Well, it's these kind of, he was, it was interesting, the Greenland thing, right? There's been a lot of talk about the whole Greenland thing and all of that. But he was supposed to have, it's Norway, right? Or Denmark? Norway?
The Dutch.
Denmark.
Denmark. It was Denmark, yeah.
So, he was supposed to go over there and meet with the leader in Denmark. But when she pretty much told him, well, we're not going to have a conversation about you buying Greenland, he canceled the trip. It's like,
Well, yeah, no need to go over there then.
Yeah, no sense in going and just being a neighborly, friendly, diplomatic country visit, But if you're not going to sell me what I want, you're not going to give me what I want, I'm not coming to see you. Fuck you. See, that's that kind of diplomacy that's just, it's a little tension for me,
what other purpose would we have of going to Denmark? I mean, what? Yeah,
have you been to Denmark? It's beautiful from what I hear.
I would like to. That'd be cool.
See, there you go. Because you would like, people want to go to Denmark.
If I'm sure he's been to Denmark before.
Maybe. It's not like he's somebody important.
Right. It's not like he can go anywhere.
They weren't filming any reality shows there that he wanted to be on, so no, I don't know.
Right. Fair enough. Midget B is bringing up the point that I was about to bring up. He should have gone over to influence them out of the EU. I don't think Denmark is in any kind of danger of leaving the EU. I would think he would start, I would say not even the UK, because they're not big fans of them over there either. At least most people aren't. But I mean, if he was to go to Brussels or something and address the EU as a government, that would be pretty fucking ballsy. That'd be a Chad move right there.
So when I talk about precursors to war or conflict, I'll say conflict. When I talk about these precursors, I can very specifically point to his diplomatic approach as one of those things. Testing those boundaries, his, as you call it, tough love. It definitely puts people at odds. Is it really this idea that, we're America, so no matter who in the world is, besides, of course, Russia and the axis of evil, anytime somebody feels threatened, they're just immediately going to come crawling to America? I mean, is that really, are we still looking at that approach here in the world that everybody's
Yeah, everyone in Europe, mostly because the EU doesn't have an army yet, which I know they're trying to get through.
Okay, hold on. Let me ask you something about that.
Like I said, like I said also that we have shitloads of military bases.
Sure,
and we'd be obligated to help them anyway.
Right. So you say the EU doesn't have, so there's not an EU army. Okay, I get that. But if you're a part of the EU,
yeah,
doesn't it kind of stand to reason that your military, your country's military, should be representative in the EU?
Yes, they have a defense pact. Yes,
right. So when you talk about Russia now, creeping. Well, it's not like standalone countries that would be worried about it. Now you're talking a conglomerate of countries with their militaries. I mean, does that not equate to a pretty sizable force in the present day? Now, as compared to 60, 70 years, what was it? Almost 80 years ago, whenever one little upstart country just took all of Europe. And then, of course, Russia showed that they could stomp that into the ground, while America sat on the, wiping up the sludge on the back end. Isn't it different now? Isn't Europe strong enough from a technological and military standpoint in this day and age to not have to rely on America to wipe their ass?
I mean, they could probably do it, but for the reasons that Midget B is talking about in the chat right now, yeah.
See, and
I don't think it would end up happening. They're too busy fighting their own,
right, and that's what
they're too busy scouring Twitter for hate speech to be fighting any wars.
Right. Well, he says an army would make the EU relevant. They want so badly to be relevant, and I get that, but again, it goes back to the standpoint. Well, if they are the European Union, they already have an army. They have a military. I mean, if anybody in the EU is threatened, there is a military there, a combined military force there. I mean, do you have to specifically bring in a bunch of people and say, okay, you're EU military, not the military of these countries?
Well, but it gives the EU government more power. It gives them military power, whereas they don't really have that right now. It's the individual countries that have their own militaries.
Sure, so but at any time the EU needs
had their own militaries.
But the EU can conscript those militaries at any time that's needed. If a situation arises, what's the word? Well, what's the right word? Call on, draw on those forces at any time. They muster the forces anytime they need them. That's part of the defense pact they have. So in effect, there is a military there. There is something to go against anyone that wants to creep on Europe. And it's not like they could creep on one country and the EU is going to go, oh, well, they're just creeping on one country. We're not going to do it. Call forces together. They already
did that with Crimea, but I don't think the Ukraine was part of the EU. But I mean, that's all they need to do.
So Midget says the rest of Europe doesn't spend 50% of their GDP on their militaries. There's no common chain of command. Yes, that's why emperors had legions loyal to them. They would need to oversee their logistics and provisions, but for now they are the armed forces of the individual member states. See, and ultimately that right there is the teller. They would need to oversee the logistics and provisions, but for now they are the armed forces of the individual member states. And the member states have to agree to commit their forces to military action. So see, and that's where now I begin to question the defense pact that they have in place. I mean, if Russia poses a significant threat to any European country, the EU should have the ability to muster up any forces it needs from any of those countries.
Well, they can ask all they want, but if the country doesn't answer the call, then they don't.
Then what's the point to being in the fucking EU? I mean, it's in for a penny, in for a pound.
Free movement between the countries, and I mean movement like travel, not necessarily immigration, I think that's a cool thing.
Right.
But that's not even close. That there's so many other problems that just far outweigh that one benefit that it's not worth it.
And to me that seems inherent. If you're going to be part of the European Union, it's that aspect. So basically, then all the EU, the leadership in the EU would need to do is worry about the logistics and provisioning. Have a plan in place. Here's where we're going to pull forces. Here's how we're going to ramp up any military conflict. Is we're going to draw forces from here, 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 and here. It's going to be supplied here, 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 and here. Work the logistics out, but you have the military at your disposal. And that's how it should be if these countries are going to get in bed as one group as an EU. I mean, Europe needs to be seen as one entire, I'm going to use the term loosely, entity. Super state, super country, a super country, whatever you want to call it. That's what it's trying to be. But inherently, the idea of what it is denotes that that's what it should be. I mean, it's a European Union there to defend and support one another come hell or high water. And, so that begs the question, do they really just not have it? Why, if you have Russia on your doorstep, why in the fuck would you not already be spending plenty of money on your military? I mean, after Germany...
They have too many government gifts to, dole out. And Germany they're the leaders of the EU at the moment. I mean, Merkel has an incredible amount of influence over them.
But what the EU, Mitchell says, but what the EU wants is a centralized chain of command over multinational forces. The only thing that could lead to in the context of Brussels is suppression. I disagree that Europe needs to homogenize identity. France is for the French, etc. I get that about identity. I do. I understand that, Midget. I get the cultures and all of that. But we're talking about military right now. Military doesn't have anything to do with culture, doesn't have to do with anything else but defense. And if you have a military and you're going to be part, here in America, we have 50 states. If America is invaded, by God, I expect every fucking 50 states to pony up and stop this fucking invasion.
Right.
I don't want to see some state sitting around going, yeah, we're in the fucking Midwest. It'll take them forever to get to us. We don't need to worry. No, motherfucker, you're part of this. This is America. You stand up and you defend every bit of America. And that's the same way the EU should be. And yes, they should have a centralized chain of command over multinational forces. That's exactly what they should be building. That's exactly the structure they should have going on. And these other countries need to be ready to pony up should Big Brother Russia come a-knocking on the door of any one of these countries.
Yeah, no, I think a defense pact, like a common defense pact, is enough. I don't think you need to put your own forces under the command of a foreigner. You know what I mean? Italian troops don't need to be under the command of French troops in Brussels. Unless, of course, during, the course of a campaign or a war where those forces are there together, you need to establish a temporary chain of command there. But one to be overseen from Brussels, I don't think so.
I understand what you're saying, Midget, about militaries like cultures belong to the communities. In a sense, yes. But, for instance, our military, our culture can be completely varied around the country. But when it comes to the military needs to be an objective entity that is not beholding to anything but the greater good of the country. And yes, they need to be part of the communities, but go ahead.
They need to be there for the defense of the country.
Well, right, the greater good.
They belong to. That's not the greater good. No, the greater good is a totally different thing. Because it could be the greater good to invade another country.
No. Wait. Sure, you can use the greater good in lots of ways because it's just a phrase, the greater good. The greater good is protecting America for the military.
The greater good is completely subjective.
Okay. Yes, it is completely subjective. It's just a phrase. Protecting America is the greater good that the military does. It's just two words, Sean, greater good. How we've conflated it and twisted it in this SJW snowflake age is fucked. I don't want to hear, this philosophical greater good concept. No, it's the simple fact.
It's not a new thing.
The military is there to protect this country.
Yes.
Exactly. Not individual communities.
Yes, correct.
That's that. We have police that take care of policing individual communities.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
we have
and
national guards and things like that.
and that's what their job is, and that's what the military in the EU should be about in those countries, because they agreed to get in bed with as the EU. They bought into that. UK wants out because I don't know. Did they did their vision clear? Did the fog clear, or is this I don't know. Is being in the EU a good thing or a bad thing?
They're the only ones who have the balls to address the mass immigration issues. The rest of them don't, or not the rest of them. I mean, there's people pissed off in all those countries, I'm sure.
Sure.
Who want to see their country, sovereign again.
And we're seeing that the EU doesn't make smart decisions. Not all the countries do. I mean, look at what happened in France with with the global warming impact of the gas prices and this, that, and the other. But that's a country. That was France, right? I mean, how much impetus was the EU on that? Was that a widespread thing that the French just got pissed off about?
It was the Paris Accord.
Oh, the Paris Accord. Yes, that's right.
Yeah,
it was a part of that.
That's what started all the nonsense, was all the protests and everything, was the price of gasoline, or petrol as they call it over there.
Now, see, Midget says the government's bought into it, and it began only as a trade union. The citizens were never asked. There was no joint referendum or joint referendum. So now I get that. And that is where it now falls on the citizenry, the population of that country, to rise up and demand change.
Which we're seeing more and more of.
Sure. And it could be, who knows, 10 years, 20 years down the road, we could see the dissolution of the EU because of this.
I think we will.
And that's what's got to happen. It's just like Hong Kong. They're having these protests, and the military is getting involved, and China's getting pissed off. But I don't give a fuck. That's how you make the move. That's what you do. Now, I don't want to get involved in it. I don't want to be involved in the EU. I don't want to be involved in Brexit. That's bullshit that they've got to work out and figure out. As long as we can still maintain trade from an economic standpoint, keep our ducks in a row, none of the other shit matters.
There's no reason why we can't trade with both the EU and the UK.
If these countries get enough voice to stand up to their governments and demand change, more power to them. If they fail to do so, fuck them. You didn't try hard enough, or you didn't try at all. It's just like Hong Kong. Yes, you guys are standing up. Now, not necessarily in the right. China has kind of, everybody has their place in this and their role, but you know what? If they succeed, they succeed, and if they don't, they don't. America needs to stay the fuck out of it. It's always going to be my stance. But just like the EU, if they start feeling pressure from Russia, we need to stay the fuck out of it. Let them deal with their own pressure with Russia. We've got our own deal with Russia to deal with, right? There's going to be a problem if we start conflating the two. I don't want to be over in the EU as their backup anymore.
But I mean, if we are going to do something with Russia, it would be on that. First of all, it'd be on that Western front there. On the Western side of Russia, which bumps right up against the EU, and then obviously it would help us to have other countries involved, so that we don't have to commit so many forces of our own, even though we obviously would have the most forces over there, because that's kind of our thing, what we like to do.
Now, now, Midget's continuing on, but he's kind of laying out a scenario in which the EU becomes this authoritarian.
Right. Well, that's what they want. I mean, they've already. I mean, come on. They regulate every single thing. They do.
I get it, but that's that's the position that's the position these countries put themselves in whenever they agree. The governments of these countries put themselves in, right? So but if they start taking those steps, I mean, if they're able to pull it off, and these countries don't stand up and fight back, well, they win. They become Europe. They're no longer individual countries. They become Europe.
Yeah.
That becomes the new country there.
Yeah. Damn.
And they're on a path to that.
Sad.
They're on a path to dissolving borders. I mean, I could see it all in the future unless individual citizenry in these countries stands up and does what the UK has done and try and dissolve the EU. It will be, because the EU, I can guarantee you, feels that the only way that they can stand up to Russia is to be one united country, quote unquote, in air quotes, one united super country. That, of course, the EU leadership has most control over. I still believe Trump wanted to get his foot in that door with Greenland. I still believe that is why he wanted Greenland. Deep down in the back of his mind. Resources be damned. Yep, that would have been great. Buying Greenland, it would have been a cool thing. President Trump bought Greenland. But deep down inside, it would have been the foot he needed to get into the EU. And he would continue that path with the EU, in my opinion, to where the EU actually kind of became an American holding, a protectorate of ours, right?
Or a vassal
state. I could see that. I could see.
They're already kind of a protectorate, to be fair.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we kind of,
it's we're poised now at the point where Russia can now deploy anything it wants to jeopardize the security of the EU. I mean, that's really what Trump did when he pulled out of this treaty. It's not to say that Russia wasn't already working on these weapons. I get it. But would they have deployed them? Would they have gone ahead and done what the expectation that they're going to do now? I mean, they're going to start setting up shop now. I mean, they have an open door to do so. There's nothing to stop them. And this is a major precursor to some serious conflict that we will get drawn into.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Obviously, we have to see, right? We can speculate all day.
Sure. But I mean, maybe Putin's just a blowhard like Trump in these things. But we are escalating the potential conflict just by the rhetoric, just by the dicks we're waving around. Everybody's showing off their weapons. Everybody's showing off what they can do. Shit, Russia's flying airplanes close to our borders constantly now, or at least we're seeing it more. It's being reported on. Not that we're not doing the same thing, but I just saw an article. They were lauding an airplane that they had that can travel however many thousands of miles, a nuclear capable carrying airplane, which could pretty much just get all over America wherever it wanted. It's like, so this is what we're all doing right now. We're all brandishing our weapons. We're all clattering our swords, and it's like, fuck,
right.
This is
saber rattling. Yeah,
this is 2019.
It is current.
How are we not above this? How did World War II not teach us a goddamn thing?
Because there's always going to be powerful countries. They're powerful countries challenge them. Who want to say, "Oh, you're bad because you're so powerful," and then become more powerful themselves. That's kind of how politics has worked since the beginning of man.
I think if like I said earlier, if people took the time and just learn about everything that went on during World War II, before, during, and after, take a look at it real close. And I have to say, Oliver Stone, I just watched one recently. I've read this, that, and I've had experience with World War II throughout my life. Hell, you had to study it pretty hardcore in school. But Oliver Stone has a new docuseries out where he basically just does a very point-blank, look at history. And, he even says, he's like, a lot of what he said his kids were in school. He learned a lot about history and this, that, and the other in school, but now he realized his kids are getting a very glossed over version of history of how things happened that make America look like this great and wonderful entity and there was a lot of backdoor bullshit that was going on that was very questionable. I even had from the perspective of some of the things that he pointed out about Truman, I had an eye-opening experience about that, because the way Truman is portrayed in like the movie Truman with Gary Sinise, he was a lot more conflicted about dropping this bomb than one would perceive from the way he truly was. Like because he was in, they were, place starts with a P, Prague, I think it was. They were, and he was waiting to hear the progress we had made on the atomic bomb. And right before he went into his very first speech and meeting with these world leaders, he got the call and said, successful test. And they said his whole demeanor shifted. He was, all of a sudden, he was just cocky and just real, not bully, but he was just like, don't fuck with us.
Yeah.
I just found out we've got the shit. And he proceeded to tell them what we were now suddenly capable of doing. He had his balls up. And I get it, but there was a lot that went on in that war that, there were signs. There were a lot of signs. And, even us sitting around saying we're not going to get involved with the war. American citizens all over the country, but no, we don't want to be part of this war. We don't want to be part of this war. But at the same time, we were still doing a few little things under the radar, sending this and doing that. And it's like, okay, so we were actively taking a part in the war subversively.
Yeah, that's because the government wanted to be part of the war, but
not the country.
They didn't have the people behind them, and a country cannot go to war if it does not have the people behind them.
Well, technically we can. All you need is congressional approval. I mean,
yeah, but if you don't have a motivated population, I mean, that's what quote unquote lost us the Vietnam War, was a lack of support at home. Right. That's what you need for a country to have a successful war.
Was there that much overwhelming support for going into Iraq?
There was enough.
Yeah, there were enough votes. There were enough votes.
Yeah, no, but even at home, there was enough sentiment. It was obviously the whole, they got, weapons of mass destruction and all this stuff, which obviously turned out to be a lie.
Sure, there was a lot of propaganda thrown around to color the opinions of people.
So they got the people, enough of the people behind them, and also people were still, reeling about 9/11.
Sure.
This was, 2005 or 6 that this happened, that we went to Iraq? Right. That was not that long after. And we'd already been in Afghanistan for a while. There was all kinds of reports of how well we're doing there, and a lot of morale boosting kind of stuff. And so the support was there.
The support was there according to polls they were doing with 1,000 people at a pop. I don't know if the support would have been there had it been presented with both sides of the argument being made, those in the White House, in Washington, that were against going into Iraq, and they were making very impassioned, logical arguments for not going into Iraq. Had we been presented with both sides of the equation and asked as a whole, I don't know that we would have gone into Iraq.
Maybe. I mean, that's not how propaganda works, obviously, is allowing both sides to speak. Propaganda is just specifically one side.
Sure.
And it's more, about stirring the emotions of the people. So there was that, and then there was also people saying we shouldn't do it, are unpatriotic, they're, they hate America. Like propaganda against people saying let's not do it.
Sure.
So, I mean, again, the average person, who just like turns on the news in the morning before they leave work, that's the opinion they're going to receive.
Right, and I get that. That's what I'm saying. Yeah. That's what I'm saying. If this was handled in a representative way, to where the American public was presented with the argument, right? I mean, it's the kind of thing where it's like, okay, in the present day and age, let us see the debate, televise a debate on this topic. Let the president make his argument, and let somebody up there so that we see it.
Yeah.
And then we can we can have an opinion on it. But they shut, if you're not sitting there watching something like C-SPAN, you don't get to see the arguments against it. The reasons why it's a bad idea, which it turned out to be a relatively bad idea. So much so that many people who voted for the war backtracked themselves and said, oh, well, I voted for it, but then I changed my stance because I get it. But, again, it's, aren't we above propaganda? Jesus Christ.
No,
have we not?
God.
Why can't we get past that? I mean, this is the kind of thing that we sit and we mock North and South Korea for sitting there blasting their propaganda over the...
No, propaganda is extremely effective, and that's why it's still being used, is how effective it is.
But doesn't it seem so antiquated?
No,
so lowbrow.
Not at all.
Propaganda. It's just sad. Yeah. It's another one of those things. We should be above. We should be better than that. Be honest with the American people.
Yeah, wouldn't that be nice?
I mean, nice
dreams to have.
If you were honest with the American people, you wouldn't have a 20-year culture of social justice having been built up.
Yeah.
You wouldn't have that. You just have transparency from the fucking government. But you can't because, now it's openly corrupt. Our government has become openly corrupt.
Yeah.
I mean, because you can't hide the corruption in this day and age anymore. But,
not as easily, no.
Now we sit around and we see it almost on a daily basis, and we just drink it with our coffee in the morning and go on about our day. And it's making me sad, John, and, well, I might cry. I could cry. You could make
I would like to see that on a live stream, not in person. That'd be unfortunate.
Yeah. So, having said that, John, I don't want to keep on with this show because I'm deflated. I'm sad. I'm upset. These are some very serious things that are happening this week. When you look at the potential for the Department of Defense to kowtow to a corporate entity, to go that route, when you have this ongoing trade war, these ongoing tensions with Russia, where it's just constantly, and it's in our face, and I'm worried that people are not waking up enough to the realities and the repercussions of these things and where we're headed. We're headed to a dark place.
I think people are waking up more and more to it, and I hate saying shit like that, like, oh, they're waking up to this, or people are getting woke to this, whatever. But anyway, I understand that's how it's used nowadays. So
sure, it's like the greater good is used nowadays in a derogatory way.
That's not recent though.
Well, I mean, it's for some of us, it's just two words.
Yeah,
that we understand the meaning of. Once upon a time, it was a whole different thing.
Hopefully, but yeah, let's continue ending the show.
Are we ending? Yeah, I'm getting the fuck out of here. All right, John, can you tell everybody what we got coming up once again? Make those announcements. Hit them hard, John.
Yes. Next Friday.
All right, thanks, John. That was good.
Place. Yep,
you're not done yet. All right.
No. We have Blonde from Beauty and the Beta podcast and Blonde in the Belly of the Beast. I'm going to be talking to her about her issues with the 19th Amendment and among other things. And then the following Friday, I will not be here. So we'll have a special guest host. Yeah. We'll have a special guest host.
We hope.
We will. We'll have.
We hope.
Anyway. And then Halloween, we've got our shorter live stream for charity and spooktacular extraordinaire. We will be extraordinaires on our spooktacular. And then December 6th, another Friday, we will have a 12-hour live stream for Toys for Tots. Oh, yeah. And yes, some handsome devil is driving me to New Orleans.
I thought Cameron was doing it.
Haha. Anyway, so yes, Toys for Tots charity, December 6th. Halloween Spooktacular for charity, and I won't be here next week. Not next week.
You better be here next week.
2 weeks from now, I won't be here, but next week we're having Blonde. So I just gave you all the announcements in a row and then reverse ordered.
And by the way, as far as this New Orleans trip, and hopefully we've still got Cameron on here, so you'll both hear it. I expect that while you're there, you're going to go and get me some beignets, box them up, and have them sent to me. They can get here next day, and they'll still be fresh. Beignets
I don't
can
know what
hold
those
on.
are.
Well, then you've got serious issues, and you need to be in
That's
New
fine.
Orleans. You need to go to New Orleans. If you
All right.
beignet,
I'm going, so.
Your first morning there, it is a requirement that you go have beignet and coffee.
All right. Yeah, Cameron's got it. He's in charge of. So.
Yeah, I want some shipped to my home while you're in New York. Ship them next day, or they're not going to be fresh. I'm just saying. But yeah, John, beignet and coffee. You'll want to have that as a New Orleans tradition. That and flashing your boobs. I mean, it's the two things.
I'll give it a shot. I'm definitely doing that. So.
Oh, and just an FYI, I recommend don't spend too much time in the French Quarter this time of year, even though it's been a while after Mardi Gras. That area is still going to smell like puke.
Gotcha.
But anyway, so folks, we're going to get the hell out of here. Remember, we will be back on Monday for our regular Shooting the Shit episode at 9 p.m. We will also be back next week on Friday, as usual, at 8:30. And again, as John said, we're going to have Blonde on here. I cannot wait to get my microphone on her.
Gonna be great.
This is going to be good. And so if you like what you're hearing, please hit the like button. If you haven't already, please make sure and subscribe. John, they can find us out there in the big bad interweb by...
Yes. By going down into the description where we have a bunch of links. We have our Twitter, which is at the Gen Gap P. We have our Discord server link. Make sure you join that. It's a lot of fun. And we have a link to freedomscoop.com as well, where you can find us and a bunch of other great creators who also do stuff and things on their own channels. And we support them. Another, obligatory comments.
Hopefully we didn't end on a bummer note, John, but
I'm fine. So
yeah, I
you're
know.
the only bummed out one.
You still
have hope. You still have dreams.
That's my problem. Is I still have some hope left in me, and it's screaming as it gets pummeled to death. All right, we're gonna get the hell out of here, John. Thanks for stopping by again tonight. It's good to have you on the show when you make these guest appearances. And all right, folks, we're going to get there. Have a good night and stay safe. Peace.
Yep. See you guys.